Today I'm going to show you how to take a selfie with the world famous coffee stirrer camera. Hi, I'm Abe. Welcome to my studio. Today I want to show you my coffee stirrer camera. This giant box beside me is a camera I made out of coffee stirrers. The most common reaction to a camera like this is, why? Why would you build a camera out of straws when we have cameras in our phones that work just fine? Well, the reason is you get a picture from this unlike anything you've ever seen before. Inside this box are 23,248 tiny straws, actually coffee stirrers. So today I'm going to give you a tour of this camera, explain how it works, and give you some tips on how to build one of these if you were to tackle this project yourself. It can be kind of hard to understand what's happening in a camera like this from the pictures I've posted. I need to explain why this camera works. So why straws? As you might know, light travels in a straight line. So if you take a straw and use it like a telescope, you can see a single point of light through that straw. I've got a small grid of straws, and if I hold this up to the camera, you should be able to see the light coming through the straws, each straw capturing a separate point of light. And that's basically the concept. Take this straw, stack it so that hundreds or thousands of straws are all pointing in the same direction. That grid of straws projects an image. How do you actually capture the image? Within this box, all these straws are pointed the same way, and on the back side of this is a sheet of glass. And that sheet of glass is covered with wax paper, just regular wax paper. And the reason for that is it gives the light that's coming through those straws something to land on. It captures that light. So if you imagine the light being projected through that. So once we have that image captured on the paper, we need to capture it digitally. And that's where the back half of this camera comes in. Basically, we're taking a picture of the image that's projected on that wax paper. Originally, I used a Raspberry Pi camera. In the articles that were going around the internet, that was part of the appeal of this, was that it was a do-it-yourself Raspberry Pi camera. What that looked like, and this is set up for a different project at the moment, but this was the lens that I was using to capture the image. This is a Raspberry Pi camera lens. It connects to a Raspberry Pi, and that allows me to write my own software, and I figured out how to control that camera with a gaming control pad. Well, it worked, and it achieved what I was trying to do. I wanted a higher quality image coming out the other end. That's why pretty much all I use right now is an SLR camera. What I've realized is I need the highest quality camera on that side that I have. That lets me control focus, and it lets me get a much better picture in low light conditions. That's the other challenge of this camera. How do you handle low amounts of light? Because you can imagine not a lot of light is let in through a straw. So on this end right now, I've got my iPhone. So I'm going to give you a live feed so you can get a sense of what's happening inside that camera. In the camera right now, you can see a texture that's created by all these straws. Each straw creating a different point on that wax paper. And as I move in front of the camera, you should be able to see my image start to appear. I'm relatively blurry right now. The reason is this distance has a big impact on the quality of the image. So watch what happens as I get closer to the glass. Right now I'm about 10 inches from the glass and it's out of focus. But as I get closer, more detail appears. And the reason I'm next to this window is so that I can let as much light in as possible. So I'm just going to experiment now so you can see kind of what happens with the different images as they're produced. Another thing about this camera is that everything that is photographed is actual size, and that's a result of all those straws being in a straight line, right? So the size of the image coming out the other side is exactly the same size as it is on this side. That's the reason I made it so big, partly because if I want to take photos of bigger subjects, I need a bigger camera. And I picked this size because it's just about right for head and shoulders. It makes it ideal for portraits. So now you start to see the challenge of shooting with a camera this large. So I've got my camera set up here, ready to take a self-portrait. I need a lot of light. I've got 2 of my biggest studio lights blazing down on top of me here. I've got as much natural light coming in from the side through the window as I can. And I've even got a light here to cast a little bit of light up. And even with that much light pumping into it, it's still a challenge. I've got my SLR camera connected on the other side, and it's tethered wirelessly to my iPad. I use an app here called Cascable, which basically lets you remotely control your camera. This is the only way I found to do this, because otherwise I'm running around to the other side of this camera to change the settings, set a timer, come over here, take the picture, right? So there's a lot of back and forth that's removed by being able to control this wirelessly. You can see here that I get a live feed of the camera, but it's pretty dark. I'm gonna take a test shot here, and we're gonna see how close I got these settings. I'm at 320 ISO with an aperture of 3.5 and a shutter speed of 0.3 seconds. So I'm trying to keep that ISO low to reduce the amount of noise. I'm trying to keep the aperture small, as small as I can, so that I can have as much of that frame in focus as possible. And then the shutter speed is the slowest that I can reasonably hold still without causing a blur. So it's 0.3 seconds, that's a really long time. And even with those settings, the light meter is reading I'm -1 on the light meter. So it's saying I'm underexposed by 1 stop. And if you remember your photography class, every stop doubles the amount or halves the amount of light that is coming in. So with all these factors playing against me, we'll see what type of photo I get with this first setting. So I'm gonna get as close as I can to this, and then I'm gonna take the picture. Within the app, so you can see even with those settings, I'm still pretty underexposed. So I'm gonna adjust and try again. I am going to change the ISO. I'm gonna go up to 500. And for fun, I'm gonna put my hand in the photo because I think that makes it a little more interesting. And now that that's copied over, you can see I'm getting a little bit better image. And there's some controls I can do with a raw image to help that underexposed image have detail. I'm gonna take a third photo and increase those settings even more. So I'm gonna change the shutter speed to 1/2 second, and I'm gonna increase the ISO to 640. So that should in theory give me 2 more stops of light. I'm gonna switch sides here. And you can see just how close I have to get to that glass. It's so awkward that it's challenging when I want to take photos of other people, because I have to get them into the studio and awkwardly close to the glass, surrounded by lights, and I have to take so many exposures to get the light right. It's kind of a nerve-wracking environment for someone to be photographed in. And from the thumbnail, I can tell that this one's getting pretty close to a good exposure. So I'm gonna go ahead and call that good. The final step is to crop and adjust the colors of this image. So I'm going to show you how I do that in iPhoto. I'm going to edit it. First, I'm going to crop it. I want a square. I don't know if you can see this, but you can see the inside of the camera. Since my SLR, the frame is larger than a square, you get more than just the image. So I'm going to zoom in to the point that I like it. I'm going to go auto adjust the tones as a starting point, and you can see that brightened it a bit, but I'm going to try to get even more detail out of this image. I'm going to start first on exposure. I'm going to increase it just a bit, leave brilliance as it is. Highlights, sometimes I bring down because the highlights have a tendency to blow out. Shadows, I'm going to bring up. And then contrast, I'm actually decreasing the contrast quite a bit. Brightness, black point, saturation, I tend to pump up the saturation a bit, and then depending on warmth, sometimes leave that alone. You can see the difference that we made here. And that's our final image. So that's how you take a self-portrait with the Coffee Stirrer camera. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and like my work, share it with friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.